Welcome to the third video in my 5-part series on the dialogue editor. In the previous video, we took a look at a very simple linear dialogue, and then we implemented player choice just to give an example of how you create player choice. In this video, we're going to take a look at starting to put conditions and scripts into our dialogue so that we can have the dialogue actually change. Because if you think back to the previous video, we have this dialogue at the moment currently on Jerry here, where every time we talk to him, this is just going to loop over and over and over and over again. But what we might want to do is have the dialogue change the second time we speak to him if we've already spoken to him, right? So let's give an example of that. Let's create a whole new dialogue, which I'm going to call name. For now, we'll just call it name. And to demonstrate this, we're going to click condition. We're going to start this dialogue with a condition node. So this is our first introduction into the condition node in terms of a practical sense. So we're going to click condition as the starting node for this dialogue. Okay. So when you create a condition node, by default, it's already filled in with a condition. And that condition is if self.property visited equals true. Okay, so what is this condition? What is self property visited? So self is always a reference to the NPC that you're talking to. So self in this case is going to be Jerry. Okay, but if we'd clicked on Tom, then self would be Tom. Okay, so it's always a reference to the NPC that you are currently in the dialogue with. Okay. Visited is a built-in property that exists on NPCs or entities that relates to dialogue. Okay, it's dialogue specific, and by default it's always false. Okay, so this at the very beginning of the game is always going to be false. So this check is therefore not going to be true. So it's always going to do the else. Okay, so the first time we talk to Jerry, in this case, the else is going to play, okay, because it's not true. On Jerry's property visited is not true, okay. So what we'll do is we'll drag an NPC node into the else box, and let's deal first of all with this being the first time we're speaking to Jerry. So what we'll do is we'll have him say, hello, what is your name? Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll have a player response. For now, this will not be a choice. Okay, let me sort of explain what we're going to cover in this lesson. So the first thing we're going to cover is dealing with one-time only dialogues. This will give me an opportunity to demonstrate conditions and scripts. Then what we'll do is we'll turn this player response into a choice. That will allow us to then slightly make this dialogue more involved, where the next time, where we'll actually track your choice this time. So whereas in the previous example, where let's just save this and open it up for a minute. So that was simple. So here, for example, not only is this dialogue happening over and over and over, but we're also not tracking, there's no importance to what the player chooses, because they can always just keep repeating the dialogue, but also nothing seems to have any impact, right? Whereas what we'll do first of all is we'll make it so that we say one conversation happens the first time and then a completely separate conversation happens subsequent times. But then what we'll do is we'll add importance to the player choice so that depending on what you choose, different dialogue will happen as well, okay? And that will be locked in. So you won't be able to change the choice at a later date. And then the last thing we'll cover is something called placeholder expression, okay? And that's going to be relevant here because we're dealing with the player's name, okay? Now, at the moment, I'm going to hard code this in. I'm just going to say, my name is Slayer, okay? Now, you may want to give your player the ability to name their character. So we don't particularly want to type in an actual name. We want the dialogue to pick up on what is the game what's the game data for the player's name, okay? So that's what placeholder expression is, and we'll get to that at the very end of this particular video. But for now, let's continue this on. So then the NPC says in response to this, nice to meet you, Slayer. Okay, and that's the end of this particular branch of dialogue. However, what we then want to do is we then want to record the fact in this dialogue that we've now had this conversation, because we don't want to talk to the guard again and him to say, hello, what is your name? Because unless he's deliberately got amnesia, if that's what you're designing a character to have, in which case fine. But in this case, we want the guard to remember that we've told him our name and he's acknowledged it. Nice to meet you, Slayer. So we don't want him to ask us what our name is again, after subsequent times we talk to him. Okay. So we need to record the fact that we've now had this conversation. How do we do that? That uses the script node. So this is again the first time we're now using the script node in a practical sense. So let's drag this into the dialogue editor underneath the nice to meet you Slayer node. Okay. Now by default, again, the script node has something already filled in the quick script section. You can click on it to edit it. Okay. But let's take a look at what this script is currently doing. Set entity property self visited true. So this is already doing what we want. It's going to set Jerry's visited property to true. It's false at the moment, which is why we've even had this conversation, because it's false. At the very end of having this conversation, it's then setting that property to true. So self again is a dynamic reference to the entity we're talking to. So in this case, Jerry. It's going to set his visited property, which is a built-in property that NPCs have related to dialogue. And it's going to set that now to true. So if we OK that, that's what this script does. So essentially what happens is when we talk to Jerry, the first thing it does is checks his property. Is it true? By default, every visited property starts false. So it's not going to do this. It's going to come down to the else section and do all of this. At the very end of this, we have a script that sets that to true. So the next time we click on him and we start this dialogue, this is actually going to be true now. So instead of doing all of this, it's now going to do the stuff we put in the then box. So what we can do is we can drag an NPC node into here and we can have him say, good to see you again, Slayer. Okay, so he's acknowledging that he's met us before because he's saying good to see you again, and he's referring to us by our name because at this point we've now told him our name in the previous conversation. Okay, so this is how you create one-time only dialogue, and it's done for you by just placing a condition node at the start and a quick script at the end of your else, because it does it for you. It's already filled in. So as long as you start your dialogue with a condition, you don't need to change the condition. Put your first time dialogue in the else section, and at the very end, just place the script node. You don't even need to change it. And then put your subsequent dialogue in the then section. That will give you a one-time only dialogue. So if we save this and we go to our map and we click on Jerry and we change his dialogue to name and we save and we test. If you now click on Jerry, it says, hello, what is your name? We say, my name is Slayer. He says, nice to meet you, Slayer. And the dialogue ends because that's the end of that path. But what it's also done behind the scenes is it's changed that property on Jerry, visited, to true. So now if we talk to him again, he shouldn't ask us for our name. He should say, good to see you again, Slayer. And that's what he's going to say all the time, as long as visited is true. Okay. We could, for example, cheat the system by bringing down the console and hovering our mouse over Jerry and typing self.property visited equals false, and we could put it back. Okay. And now if we talk to him again, because it's false, he's got amnesia again, and he's asking us for our name. Okay, but that's how the dialogue works. And now at the end of that path, it's set it back to true. So if we talk to him again, now he's remembered again what our name is. Okay, so that's how to create one-time only dialogue. So here we are back in the dialogue editor. We'll just collapse everything so you can see it. So this is what it looks like. So if self property visited is true, it won't be by default. So else, hello, what's your name? My name's Slayer. Nice to meet you. Quick script that says set that property visited to true. And then the next time it will be true. So then good to see you again, Slayer. Okay. So I will give you far more examples of these conditions and things in the next video. But let's now move on to recording a choice. So, for example, maybe we don't want to tell the guard our name, so we want a choice for that. So, again, we've got a bit of an issue here where I'm going to have to move things around. So I'm just going to quickly create a section called section 2. And I'm just going to drag, don't even know if I can, no, so we'll just add a condition separately. So this is going to be if visited is true. And we're going to, hello, what is your name? We'll put my name is Slayer in there, but we'll add another choice over the top. If we say my name is Slayer, he says nice to meet you, Slayer, and then has that script. Might add that quick script down there, maybe not, so we'll just get rid of that. We'll add it in manually. Okay, the other option we could choose is none of your business. And the guard can respond with, how rude, I was only asking. And then at the very end of this path as well, we need the same quick script, because I'm going to have to add it above and then move that up. Sometimes you have to rearrange things a little bit. No, that's not right. It's a little bit of problem here. Let's add that back in again. I'm running out of space. Let's, the only problem with the dialogue editor is it gets a bit fiddly the more you have in it. So what was it? How rude, I was only asking. Now I need to get a script under there somehow. I think how to do this. Can I collapse? Let me collapse section 1. That might help. Yeah, there we go. And then script. So we need to have a script underneath both of these choices, because depending on which one you choose, we still need to set this, that we still need to set this to true, that we have spoken to him, right? So it's important that we, in either choice, we have a quick script that is setting this visited to true, okay? However, we're also going to deviate a little bit now, because depending on which choice we choose, the guard will either know our name the next time we talk to him, or we would have been rude to him the first time we talked to him. So we want to track that choice, okay? Because it doesn't make sense for us to have an NPC node for when we have spoken to him. For him to say something like, hello again, Slayer, because we may not have told him our name. We might have said none of your business. So the context wouldn't work. So we need to track the choice so that the context fits the scenario, okay? So what we need to do is a couple of things. First of all, we need another condition if this is true. So let's add another condition node into the then section, okay? Like that. So if it's true, then if something else, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to check another property on Jerry, which we will create in this dialogue. So the property is going to be called let's just call it name underscore known. If name known is true, then that means we told him our name, in which case he can say, good to see you again, Slayer. Okay? If the name is not known, so if it's false, then he can say, oh, it's you again, because you were rude to him, so he's not being particularly nice to you back. Okay? So, in order for this to work, in these two scripts, depending on the path you choose, we need to track that. So, we're going to open up this one, click it to edit it, add a semicolon there so we can add something else, and we'll just copy this. It makes more sense to do that. Copy, paste, and we're going to set entity property self name underscore no, and this is for when we tell him our name, so this should be true, so that's fine. So validate, okay. So there's our script that not only records the fact that we've spoken to him, but we've also told him our name, okay? Whereas in the other one, this one, click on this, add a semicolon, new line, paste. This is going to be name known, but we're going to specify that this should be absolutely false because we did not tell him our name. Validate, okay. So this one is saying we have spoken to him, but this time we didn't tell him our name. Okay, so let's collapse all of those down. So this, we don't need this anymore. Let's get rid of that. So this is our slightly more complicated dialogue file, as you can see. But essentially what we're doing is we're saying, have we spoken to him before? No, we haven't. Okay, so he says, what is your name? We get a choice. We can say, my name is Slayer, in which case he says that, and then it records the fact that we have spoken to him, but also we didn't, but we did tell him his name, our name. If we choose this one, then he says this, and then it records the fact that we have spoken to him, and we didn't tell him our name. The next time we talk to him, it says, have you spoken to him before? Yes, we have. Okay. Did you tell him your name? No, we didn't. Okay, so he says that. Or, yes, we did. Okay, he says that. Does that make sense? So let's save the game and let's quick play. So if we now talk to Jerry, hello, what is your name? We can either say my name is Slayer or we can say none of your business. So let's say my name is Slayer. He says, nice to meet you, Slayer. And now if I click off and talk to him again, good to see you again, Slayer. He knows he's not repeating the initial dialogue because we've already spoken to him, but more specifically, he knows that we told him our name, so he can refer to us by name. Let's just quickly restart the game so we can choose the next option. So this time we'll say none of your business. He says, how rude, I was only asking. If we talk to him again, oh, it's you again. So he again knows not to repeat the question about what's our name, but he also knows that we were somewhat rude to him, so he's not particularly being nice back, okay? So that's how you can have one-time only dialogue, but also track what you chose the first time you spoke to him. Does that make sense? So the last thing to cover in this video is we've created this scenario where we're telling the NPC our name, but at the moment that name is static. It's hard-coded into the dialogue. So your player is always going to have the name Slayer, but you might not want that. You might want it to be, you might want the player at the beginning of your game to choose a player character, for example, or name their character. So we need this to be a bit more dynamic. So how do we do that? Well, this is where we talk about placeholder expression. So placeholder expression, to put it simply, it just allows you to put dynamic text into your dialogue. It would be text that is the contents of a variable or the contents of a game-specific piece of information, like your health, your currency amount, your money amount, what your name is in this case. Could be what your model is. It could be any tags that you have. Anything that is game-specific information that can change, you can have that text appear in dialogue. in order to do that, you have to specify your dialogue in a particular way. So let's open up this player node here where we say my name is Slayer. Let's delete the Slayer text. We'll leave the exclamation point in because we can have that at the end of the placeholder expression. So currently we have my name is. Okay, so the my name is bit is going to be the same. That's the bit that's hard-coded. But the next bit of text should change based on what is the name of the player. So what you do is you type $, open and close curly brackets, and then inside the curly brackets, open and close speech marks. Oh no, sorry, don't open and close speech marks. Just inside the curly brackets, type player.name. And that's a reference to the name property on the player. Okay, that's a reference to, in the model properties of your player character, that's this here. So in my case, it will still say Slayer, but if I change this, just so it's not, let's put Henry. Now, in-game, it will appear as Henry. Okay, we can also change that in-game so you can see it having an effect. Okay, but for now, we'll change it here. So now that will say my name is Henry because that's the name that's set on that particular, in this case, player character. So let's do that for every reference to Slayer. So now, every time the NPC acknowledges our name, it's going to be relevant to the name on the player. So good to see you again, $player name. Nice to meet you, $, open and close curly brackets, player.name. Okay, save. So now let's go into game and see how that looks. So if I talk to Jerry, now we get my name is Henry. Even though I didn't specifically type Henry in the dialogue editor, it's retrieving it from my model property, the name property, and it's filling it in for me. So if I say my name is Henry, the NPC will respond with nice to meet you, Henry, because he's also retrieving that same piece of text. Okay. If I talk to him again, good to see you again, Henry. Okay. Now what I can do is I can bring down the console and I can type. My keyboard's messing up a bit. Hold on. Player.name equals, let's just change his name to Ishmael. Okay. So now if I talk to the guard again, he will retrieve that. Good to see you again, Ishmael. Okay. So it's dynamic. The dialogue will always, that name bit will always be relevant to the current information or data in your game. So there are plenty of things you can put in a placeholder expression. For example, you could have player.stat currency. That will then be a numerical value. So you could say I have, and then player stat currency, and then it will be a number. So I have 10 gold coins, or I have 15 gold coins. So, so the my name is gold coins that doesn't make any sense, but we'll leave it as it is for now. But the my name is and gold coins will always be static, but the player stat currency will be the numerical value of how much money you have in your inventory. Okay. Other things you can do, contents of variables. So if you have a global property, for example, I'm not sure what you might have, but that could be a Boolean, for example. If that was true, then it would be my name is true, So that's how you use placeholder expression, okay? So that brings us to the end of this video. Let's just collapse these down so you can see everything at the end. So that's the end of this video where we've covered introducing conditions and scripting, and also placeholder expression. In the next video, we'll take another look, a more in-depth look at conditions and scripting nodes. We'll also cover the goTo node as well, giving an example of using that as we cover an example dialogue for quests and an example dialogue for just tracking the state of your game. In our case, have you killed a particular NPC or not? Okay, so 2 examples that will allow us, and the quest one will also cover many different things. Have you got a particular item? And have you spoken to the NPC before? That kind of stuff. So the next one will be a lot more involved. So hopefully you're starting to progressively pick up more and more of the dialogue editor by now. That's why I was making this more and more complicated as we go. Okay, so hopefully you've been following along. That, as I say, brings us to the end of this video. So I hope you found these videos so far interesting and useful. Stay tuned for the next one.